Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Fire Country. Hokage's office. Alright, start from the beginning again please. Tsunade rubbed her eyes, feeling her stress building. Naruto and that girl with him, Yugito I think her name was, were able to match Itachi and Kisame blow for blow throughout the entire confrontation. Their teamwork was brilliant. They covered each other's weaknesses perfectly, making sure neither of them took any potentially fatal damage, Jiraiya expressed. Laned in a reporting tone. What level would you say they're at? The Hokage asked, knowing the council would just love this news. Sanin easily. Borderline low cage if they were to use those sage modes of theirs, the Gamma Sennin mused. Sage mode? Where'd they get them from? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at her former teammate. Well, we know they signed summoning contracts with the Kitsune and the Nekomata, so probably from them, Jiraiya answered. You know, all summoners have their own versions of Sage mode once they reach a certain level. Excuse me, what's Sage mode? Sakura asked, never having heard of it before in all her years of studying under the Hokage. Jiraiya looked at her for a moment before explaining, I suppose you could call it a rite of succession for becoming a sage. A summoned race like the Toads, for example, are able to give their summoners a means to increase their overall abilities, and once a sage mode is triggered would signify a new sage being born. Each summoning contract has a different set of skills and abilities, not to mention the risk involved in each one. Risk? Sakura asked, slightly worried. Well, depending on the sage mode, it could very well end up backfiring and harming its user, or worse. That's the reason I didn't teach it to Naruto during our 3 years away. If I did, he might have turned into a toad statue, explained the Gamma Sennin before he pointed his thumb at the Hokage. Hers grants her the ability to heal from just about anything, making her virtually unkillable for as long as it's active. It's a more stable and powerful version of her kinjutsu. Most of the room's occupants seemed surprised at this. Mine grants me access to a set of jutsu called senjutsu and physical strength far surpassing that of any normal man. Like I said, it boosts a person's power 100-fold, putting you on par with a kage. When Sarutobi Sensei used his monkey sage mode, he was once able to fight off the other 4 cages by himself, and because of his unmatched strength he was nicknamed the God of Shinobi, Tsunade added. Yeah, the old pervert was invincible. He could decimate an entire army by himself in a matter of minutes, rivaling that of Minato's raw power with his Hiraishin no Jutsu. Jiraiya grinned, remembering the many battles his sensei had gotten in during the wars. What about you, Kakashi sensei? You've got a dog summoning contract, right? Sakura asked, remembering seeing her sensei summon before. The copy nin nodded and replied simply, I was unable to complete the training to become an Inu Sennin because of my Sharingan eye. It interfered with the sage mode activation process. Jiraiya and Tsunade nodded in agreement. Of course, since the Sharingan bloodline is not a part of your regular DNA, it couldn't work properly. Kakashi sighed, still reading his orange book. It can't be helped. What about you guys, sensei? Tenten asked, remembering the man also had a summoning contract. I also have a summoning contract with the tortoises, but I turned the offer down, wanting to be a taijutsu specialist, Guy answered truthfully. Anyway, even if I were to use my toad sage mode, I think even I would be hard-pressed to defeat either of them now. I'd be able to win, don't get me wrong, but that would only be because I have more experience than either of them, the Gamma Sennin finished. I'll tell you right now, facing them both together would be utter suicide, even for me. Very well. You're all dismissed until further notice. Tsunade sighed and the retrieval team bowed before leaving, with only Jiraiya remaining. Is something wrong? On our way back to Konoha, I stopped by one of my spy circles. They've found a lead on Akatsuki's base of operations and their leader. I'm going to go and check it out. Whirlpool Country. Unknown location. They had been traveling for 3 full days before they finally reached their destination. The island was massive, surrounded on all sides by hundreds of small whirlpools, preventing any access by ship. Fortunately, both of the Toad Princes were able to ferry the 2 blondes to the island, though they were exhausted by the end of it, though Gamatsu was more than happy when he got given some candy. The two summoned creatures had decided to stick around, wanting to continue on with them. As the group proceeded inland, the four had begun training themselves whenever they stopped but kept on guard. Hold they find anything dangerous. The island, however, was nothing like they had thought it was. The forests, the fields, hell, even the ground itself looked and felt dead. What is this? Yugito asked, looking around at the silent forest they stood in. Everything here is dead, said Naruto. There's no life anywhere. Gamakichi spoke in a saddened tone, examining the ground. What could have done this? I think I might have an idea, Naruto answered. Kyuubi, if you can hear me, then do you mind explaining? After a few moments of silence, it was clear he was not going to get an answer. Let's keep moving. The group walked for another 30 minutes before something odd happened. Yugito hit an invisible wall and fell down. Ow! She winced, covering her nose. What the hell just happened? Yugito, you alright? Naruto asked, helping her up. Yeah, but I think I just walked into something, she answered, checking to see if there was any blood. There's nothing there, Yugito, the Kitsune Sennin told her, looking at where she was walking. I'm telling you, something's there, she growled in frustration. Air, Naruto? Gamakichi asked, seemingly tapping the air itself. That's solid. Putting up his hand, Naruto touched whatever it was, feeling a seemingly invisible flat surface in air. Is that a genjutsu? It would have dispelled if it were. I think it's a barrier, Yugito told him. Naruto nodded. Alright, let's see if we can crack it. And how do we do that? Asked the elder Toad Prince. The newly nicknamed God of Flash just grinned like a fox. By blasting it with everything we have, of course. Hey, Gamatatsu. He turned to the yellow toad. How about we test out that new jutsu we've been working on? The younger Toad Prince smiled widely and nodded, turning to where the barrier was. Whenever you're ready. Yugito, Gamakichi, get behind us, Naruto ordered, and the two followed it. Gamatatsu charged himself full of chakra and inhaled a large amount of water vapor from the air, liquefying it in his mouth. Alright, let's do this. Naruto charged chakra to his hand, merging it with Gamatatsu's, and pressed his hand to the toad's back. Now. Futon. Gama Teppo. He called out as the younger toad let loose a massive blast of water from his mouth in a stream. The blast hit the invisible barrier with tremendous force and sprayed across the entire area until a rather loud sound of glass shattering echoed through the countryside. As the mist cleared, structures could clearly be seen, most of which were ruins, but there were a few that were still standing, like a certain tower in the center which could be seen even at their distance. Air, if you don't need us anymore, Naruto, I think we'll be going. Dad's probably worried about us, Gamakichi spoke up, getting their attention. Yeah, we should be fine from here on out. Thanks for the help, guys, the Kitsune Sennin thanked. Anytime, Gamakichi waved before he disappeared in a poof of smoke. I'm hungry, Gamatatsu whined before disappearing as well. Naruto sighed before turning to his companion. Well, are we going? When she nodded in reply, they continued on inside. This place is more like a graveyard than a hidden village, the Neko Sennin shivered as they walked down the street. That or a ghost town. Naruto shivered when she said that. Please don't say that. You're not afraid of ghosts, are you, Naruto? She asked slyly. No, I'm not, he answered quickly, shaking his head. Right, she spoke in sarcasm as they continued walking. After a few minutes of walking through the deserted village, they arrived at the wall surrounding the tower like a barrier, taking notice that the entire place looked to be ready to collapse. Nice place for a vacation, huh? Even an idiot could tell she was being sarcastic. He didn't say anything to that, but instead jumped over the wall and spotted the entrance along with something else. She jumped down beside him a moment later and looked at what had made her partner stop. Right in front of the entrance was a small platform in the shape of a spiral. In its center, however, standing straight up in its pedestal, was what caught their eye. It was a sword, a double-edged sword. She had never seen a weapon so beautiful in her life. The sword's handle was plated crimson and the blade itself was an eerily silver, with its edges seeming to shine in the daylight sun. Without a word, Naruto stepped towards the platform and raises his hand to touch the sword when it suddenly seemed to pulse like it was alive. He jumped back as a ball of red light shot out from the handle and hovered before them. Some kind of booby trap? Yugito asked in thought as the two nins thought get ready to fight if necessary. They didn't need to, however, as the light seemed to expand and brightened. They took note of a figure standing in the light. What is that? The light died down, revealing a long red-haired woman who looked about 25 years old, dressed in cage robes and wearing a light blue hat with the kanji for Whirlpool written on it. She raised her head, revealing her face from under the wide hat. She was beautiful and seemed to radiate a sense of authority with a hint of childishness. The woman looked over at the two and her eyes widened at the teenage boy, Minato-kun. Is that you? Naruto took a step back when she reached out a hand towards him. Who are you? How do you know my father? The woman stopped at that and Yugito stared intently, trying to analyze the red-headed beauty. If you're here to take revenge or some crap on me to get back at Dad, then speak you. Before we kick your lady. Why your father? But that would mean. Her eyes suddenly widened in recognition and she smiled at the boy's attitude. You're Naruto. Answer the question. Who are you? Naruto almost shouted, though his partner seemed to relax. That attitude? I used to be like that when I was younger. The woman removed her head and cleared the red hair from her face. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. I am the Nadaime Uzukage of Uzugakure no Sato and, your mother. The two teens were left speechless. Mom, was all the blonde male could get out before taking another step back. No, you can't be here. You're supposed to be dead. Naruto, the Neko Sennin said nervously, catching his attention. She's not really here. I can't sense anything from her. She's not real. I'll have you know I am very real. Kushina spoke in an annoyed tone before she grabbed the younger girl by the shoulders and smiled. See? Quote. But you have no life readings. I can't sense you, meaning you can't be alive. It's against the laws of nature, Yugito argued, still trying to find the woman's signature but finding none. That's because I'm already dead. The redhead smiled sadly and put the girl down. She sighed and turned to the blonde boy. What you see now is nothing more than dust and echoes. She suddenly grabbed him and pulled him close. My, how you've grown, Naruto. Can't breathe, Mom, he rasped out before she let go, letting him gasping for air. She waved her hand dismissively before turning to the blonde girl. Do I know you, miss? Yugito looked a bit embarrassed before she bowed and stated her name. Sorry, Uzumaki-sama, my name is Yugito. She's traveling with me. Naruto stepped in. Kushina looked the girl over a few times before she sent a suspicious look at the fox boy. It appears you take after Minato-kun in more than just looks, Naru-chan. Both teen blushed at that, with Naruto's arms shaking in protest. We're not like that, honest. Who would want this guy? He's a total idiot. Yugito shouted, pulling on her fellow blonde's cheeks. I take great offense to that, Naruto grumbled after she let go. Really? Good. She shouted happily, only making him pout more. Oh my. Kushina giggled at their antics. My mistake then. After they had calmed down, they had fallen into silence until. Are you really my mom? Are you really Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto asked, staring at the woman intently. I am, but yet I'm not. It's hard to explain. I suppose you could say that the original Uzumaki Kushina was my creator, the redhead tried to clarify. What do you mean, creator? Yugito asked, confused. Are you some kind of genjutsu? The older woman smiled and shook her head before explaining. I'm a copy of her. A shadow clone would be an adequate description. But unlike a shadow clone, I can last forever as long as I don't use chakra or complete or fail any order I am given. Order? What was the order your creator gave you? Yugito asked. Kushina just sighed before answering. The original Kushina created me so that if anything ever happened to her I'd act as a sort of last will and testament. The two teens took a step back. Last will? Naruto asked, barely above a whisper. The redhead smiled. She used every trick she knew and more just in case. It was her greatest achievement and her last. Why? The Kitsune Sennin asked, plagued with that single question. Kushina answered with a wide smile and her eyes closed. because she left me to deliver a few words for the son she never saw. Mom, Naruto didn't know what to say. Her image suddenly flickered. Oh dear, it appears I used more power than I thought. Kushina shook her head. It looks like I have less time than I would have liked, so I'll have to make this quick. Mom, can I ask you something? He asked. Of course, she replied. What do you wish to know? I want to know why Kyuubi attacked both Fire Country and Whirlpool Country. Naruto asked, stated surprising Yugito. He never mentioned that, though I didn't actually ask him why we're here, the blonde girl thought, looking between him and the now seemingly saddened copy of his mother. It's all our fault, she finally rasped out, meeting his gaze. Kyuubi attacked because it was trying to kill both Minato and I. The two teens stared at her surprised. Kyuubi was sent to kill us by his summoner while I was pregnant with you. Naruto. Wait, someone summoned the Kyuubi. As in the supposed walking natural disaster Kyuubi no Kitsune? Yugito asked, completely freaked at this piece of information. Your eyes reek of a chakra far fouler than my own. It reminds me of Uchiha Madara. Naruto grabbed a hold of the older woman's shoulders and asked in an almost frightened tone, what was the summoner's name? Please tell me. Kushina shook her head. I don't know. We never got his name. We didn't even see his real face. He always wore a mask. He let go of her and asked, where can I find him? She shook her head again and answered plainly, I don't know, but even if you did, you wouldn't be able to kill him or even touch him. He managed to hold his own against both Minato and I together. He saw through everything we did and we could barely even touch him. He had some kind of defense that made him invulnerable to almost everything we threw at him. So I guess even the Rasengan wasn't enough. Naruto half asked. Rasengan? How do you know about that jutsu? Redhead asked in surprise. The blonde boy just sighed and formed a ball of spinning chakra in his hand. Ero Sennin taught it to me 3 years ago. Kushina just remained silent for a few moments with eyes wide before asking, you learned it 3 years ago? You look about 16. How long did it take you to master that jutsu? 3 weeks to learn it and another week to master. It wasn't even field tested until I shoved it in a bad guy's gut. At the end of the final week, you should have seen the look on his face when I blasted him into a boulder, Naruto told her with a grin when he remembered how he won the necklace that was around his neck. Kushina herself and even Yugito were stunned at that. The Rasengan was an A-ranked jutsu designed by the supposed strongest Hokage in history, which took him 3 years to create and the Gamma Sennin a full year to learn. For a child no older than 13 to master a jutsu of that level and in the time he did was unheard of by either of the two females. I must say, that is surprising, Kushina finally managed to say, having recovered from what she had learned, and smiled at the boy. She sighed once again before continuing, knowing they were getting off of track. Anyway, yes, even the Rasengan wasn't able to hit the guy, though Minato did manage to land a few blows with his experimental Rasengan. You mean an elemental one? Naruto asked. She turned to him wide-eyed. How do you know about that? He seemed annoyed now. Well, let's see, I've been slugging around a futon Rasengan for just under 2 months since I was banished. It wasn't his fault, but he let slip a very dangerous piece of information in that sentence. You were what? Kushina exploded, grabbing his collar. What do you mean you were banished? As the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially from a redhead. Well, I was thrown out because I lost control of the furball a while back against Orochimaru and got one of my teammates injured. He saddened as he remembered his pink-haired former teammate. Kushina dropped him and looked away. Minato, you idiot. She sent a punch at a nearby wall, causing it collapse from the impact. That stupid fool. I told him not to put too much faith in the people, but would he listen? No. She shook her head. I knew it. It wasn't bad enough he split the seal in two, but he went and put his faith in the people again, only to have our son pay the price. It appeared Itachi was right. Naruto did inherit his inability to keep his mouth shut from his mother. In the middle of her rant, she had mentioned one very important detail. Hey, what do you mean my seal split it too? Naruto nearly shouted in surprise. The redhead stopped her rant and looked at him with a pale face. You heard that? She asked. He gritted his teeth in response, loud and clear. Kushina gulped. Yeah, about the seal. It only contains and filters half of Kyuubi's power and soul, so he is naturally evil all of the time. Excuse me, what the hell is that supposed to mean? It was Yugito that asked. After all, being the Jinchuriki of the Queen of the Damned, you learned a few things about souls. One of which is knowing that you can't split a soul into good and evil. It's not possible. Separating a soul into good and evil creates instability. Why would you do something like that? It goes against the laws of nature. You can't have one without the other, so why would you even attempt such a thing? Quote. Kushina scratched her head nervously before answering. Well, the only things that can hurt that masked guy were my sword, Minato's unstable, futon, Rasengan, and highly condensed attacks like those from the Biju. So you wanted me to use it as a weapon just in case? Naruto asked, thinking over what she had said. Kushina nodded in reply before explaining further. Yes, the seal can be completed once again if you were to summon the key toad Minato entrusted the key to. I think his name was Garotora. You do have the toad summoning contract, right? When he nodded, she continued. The key seal he holds is meant to restore the seal to maximum power and fuse the Kyuubi back together into one being once more, allowing you to control more tails of power, though you can still be overloaded because of the pain involved. Wait, I can control more tails? He asked, stunned that little bit of information. Well, yes, in theory, though it would be up to you to control it. It's like a kunai in the aspect that if the wielder is not strong enough, the weapon will be nothing more than that, the redhead said knowingly. Speaking of weapons, she turned towards the sword lodged in the spiral pedestal. This weapon here was my personal sword, our family sword. Wait, I thought you said your sword could hit Kyuubi's last summoner through his defenses, is this it? Yugito asked, circling around the pedestal. Kushina nodded. It is the sword of the Whirlpool and only ever wielded by the heir to the Uzumaki clan throughout each generation. She turned to Naruto and smiled. This sword is the pride and joy of our clan. As the only remaining heir to the clan, it belongs to you, so treat it well. Sword is mine? Asked the Kitsune Sennin as he stared at the blade. Kushina chuckled before nudging him towards the weapon. Go on, claim your inheritance. He stepped in front of the sword, looking down at its handle, seeing the light reflect off of it. Yugito watched with a small smile as he wrapped his hands around its hilt and in one quick motion pulled it out of the pedestal. A gust of wind whizzed through the area as two images appeared on the blade. On one side was the picture of a toad decked out in a long coat with a dagger in hand and a small smoking pipe in its mouth. On the other side was the image of a roaring orange fox with 9 tails. A light suddenly shot out from the sword and hit Yugito. For a moment nothing happened until the light dimmed and a beautiful golden bow appeared in her hands with a spiral carved over the image of a cat with 2 tails engraved into the weapon. Before either of the two teens could say a word, both weapons disappeared in 2 flashes of lights each. They noticed that on the back of both of their right hands were storage seals in the shape of spirals. What just happened? The Kumo Nin asked, looking at the back of her hand. I must be leaving now, I'm afraid. Good luck. Kushina smiled sadly but slightly hopeful at the two. Summon those weapons like you would any other, with a few choice words and a little faith. We'll do that, thanks Mom. Naruto clenched his fists as he watched the last legacy of his mother fade away from existence. I'll make you proud. You already have. And then she was gone, faded away into memory, forever lost to the world of the living. After she had disappeared, Yugito looks from the spot the redhead had stood towards her partner. So, what will you do now? I want to leave, he finally answers, looking at his hand. There is nothing left for me here now. The Neko Sennin nodded and looked around. Where are we going? Naruto thought about for a moment before he answered. I know exactly where we can go, Wave Country. It had been 3 months since they had left Whirlpool Country after they had salvaged whatever they could from Uzugakur's ruins. They had mostly just found some scrolls on water elemental manipulation and a single water jutsu scroll. It wasn't really surprising since the country was surrounded by nothing but ocean, creating a natural defense against attacks. It would have been obvious that the country's former occupants would use the island's natural defenses to their advantage. Unfortunately, only Naruto could actually use the jutsu, since after Yugito had pretty much shoved a chakra elemental paper into his hands, he had discovered he had a water element. Al affinity. Note: it's pretty obvious since his last names are Uzumaki and Namikaze, both have a reference to water in some way. The two had set off towards Wave Country, but every time the two had stopped to sleep, Naruto could always hear the faint sounds of sobbing coming from the other tent. Though he wouldn't admit it, it had him worried every time. When he asked Yugito about it, she would always say it was nothing and had continued to give that answer since the two had started traveling together 4 months ago. It still had him worried though. Upon their arrival to Wave Country, however, they came across something they weren't expecting to see. What the heck is this? Yugito's voice could be heard for miles. In front of them was the large bridge connecting Wave Country to the mainland. There wasn't anything really wrong with it other than the fact it was extremely long, but its name is what caught the two travelers' attention. Its name, printed on the archway above their heads, stated quite clearly, Great Naruto Bridge. What the hell? She asked again, turning on heel to face her partner. Do you mind explaining, because I want an explanation? Quote, well, you see, Naruto laughed nervously. My old team and I might have saved this entire country from total annihilation. Alright. Then why did they name the bridge after you? She asked, looking between him and the sign. He scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Well, I sort of sparked this country's courage and defeated one of the nins trying to destroy the peace here. Yugito frowned at that. She'd seen the reports on the Battle of Wave, as the locals had been calling it, and so the rest of the world had come to know it as well. The report didn't match what Naruto had just said. What the report said was that Hitaki Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke had fought both Kiri Nukenins and won before finally moving on to kill Gato. It never mentioned anything about Naruto or the other teammate, just Kakashi and Sasuke apparently saving the country of Wave. Once the two had crossed the bridge and entered village, Yugito had fully accepted that the mission report had been falsified, as when they walked through the streets, children and adults alike stopped to stare in awe at them, more like him. These people are looking at him as if he were their hero. The report was definitely falsified, probably to keep a lid on the demon's success, the Neko Senin thought bitterly, looking over at Naruto's smiling face. Hey. Well, if it isn't the loudest ninja I ever met. They heard from in front of them. They looked up and saw a man who looked to be in his mid-60s standing in the middle of the street, dressed formal wear befitting a man of authority. Welcome back, brat. Tazuna, you old drunk. How's it going? Naruto waved, running up to the man with Yugito trailing a few feet behind. Same old. I'm the mayor now, by the way, he said offhandedly before looking over to the Kumo nin. It's good to see you again. I heard what happened in Konoha. Naruto looked away at that, trying to forget what had happened only 5 months ago. I'm surprised you heard about that. Are you kidding me? The entirety of the elemental countries knows that the son of the Yondaime Hokage was exiled from his home just for being born. The aged man shook his head. Still can't believe you're that man's kid though, Tazuna just laughed. Nevertheless, I never thought you'd show up here. Half the elemental countries have sent out hundreds of ninja to look for you. The Kitsune Sennin laughed nervously. What were you expecting, you old drunk? I'm actually surprised they didn't kick me out sooner. He shook his head, clearing his mind. Never mind that. Do you mind if we stay for a while? I mean, if it's not too much trouble. Tazuna nodded, looked between the two blondes. Sure, and of course your little girlfriend here can stay too. Naruto blushed at the thought and waved his arms in defense. She's not my girlfriend. Please. Who would date this idiot? Yugito gestured towards the ex-Konoha nin. He's reckless, gets into more trouble than anyone I've ever met, and is a pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that he's saved my life, I would have gladly remained in Kumo instead of staying with him on this crazy ride. You don't have to be so forceful about it, Yugito, Naruto grumbled under his breath, turning away in a huff. Tazuna eyes them for a few moments before dragging out his words. Oh, I see, my mistake then. Shaking his head, he gestured towards the nearby lake. Come on, you can both live at my place. Inari. Dinner's ready, yelled a female voice from the house's kitchen. I'll be right there, Mom. A young boy of 11 yelled back, dashing down the stairs. Once he entered the kitchen, he sat on one of the chairs at the table. So what are we having today? Quote, you'll find out in a minute, Tsunami answered cheerfully. Inari nearly gagged and groaned out, Mom, can we please go out to the dock to eat or something? He whined. It looked like the woman's eyes were glowing red. Are you saying my cooking is bad? She asked dangerously. Inari waved his hand in defense. No, I just thought you might want to do something different. He laughed nervously as he saw his mother's gaze settle. That was a close one. He looked around, taking notice of his grandfather's absence. Where's Grandpa? I thought he'd be here by now. Tsunami looked over the stove to see how it was doing as she answered, he should be home anytime now. You know how hard he works these days. The boy sighed at that. I know, but I barely get to see him anymore. Suddenly the doorbell went off, alerting to the two. Would you get that, Inari? His mother asked. The boy nodded, standing up and moving towards the door. Taking a look out the peephole, he immediately recognized his grandfather and opened the door. When he did, he took notice of the two blonde teenagers at the door with his grandfather. He looked between the two and Tazuna before his eyes widened as he recognized 6 scar-like birthmarks on the male teen's face, knowing that only one person had them. Naruto Nissan. Inari stuttered and heard a clatter of dishes from back in the kitchen. Suddenly his mother appeared at his side too. Why, you're really here? Hey Inari. Tsunami-san. Long time no see. The Kitsune Senin suddenly found himself tackled to the ground by the boy. Nissan. Inari shouted, trying to hold back a wave of tears. As if to answer Naruto's unasked question, Tazuna spoke up. Ever since we got word about your exile, Inari-kun has been worried sick about you. The male teenager nodded in understanding before pushing the kid off of him gently and crouching down onto one knee so that they were eye level. Come on, no. I thought you weren't going to cry anymore. It's not very manly, you know. You do want to be manly, don't you? Sniffing slightly, Inari rubbed his eyes and nodded. Sorry about that, Nissan. Don't worry about it. Naruto smiled, patting him on the shoulders, getting the young boy to calm down. He's good with kids, Yugito mused before she shook her head. What am I thinking? Why do I care? It's not like I like that idiot, even though she thought that she couldn't escape the feeling of warmth in her chest when she looked at the scene. Is this your girlfriend, Naruto-kun? Tsunami asked with her attention on the Kumo nin. Yugito blushed at that and shook in frustration. I am not his girlfriend. She continued past them and entering the house angrily. Turning to her father, Tsunami asked as Naruto followed the blonde girl, what was that about? They have that sort of relationship, Tazuna replied knowingly and entered the house. Love, hate. My, this should be interesting, the woman giggled and headed back to the kitchen. Huh, was the only thing Inari could say as he didn't understand what they were talking about. After about 10 minutes, the group could be found sitting around the kitchen table eating the seafood Tsunami had cooked, much to Inari's dismay. So you two, what brings you here? Tazuna asked before taking another bite out of his meal. Naruto stopped for a moment to answer. We need a place to lie low for a bit to plan our next move. He waved his hands in defense. Don't worry, we won't be staying long. Just a day or two before anyone decides to come knocking. The town mayor merely shook his head. I never said you couldn't stay, kid. To hell with any ninja that come by. This is a proud country and we have unbreakable will because of you. I'll be damned if it's going to fall just because some ninja want to kill you, so stay as long as you want. Naruto shook his head at that. Thanks, but it would be safer if we kept moving. Tazuna sighed as his daughter handed him some sauce. Well, I'm sure you'll be glad to know Konoha has been getting hammered for the last month or so. Both Naruto and Yugito raised their heads at that. What do you mean? The Kumo nin asked. The aged man seemed surprised for a moment before he explained. After you were exiled, kid. Wave and about 4 other countries have withdrawn their alliances with Fire Country because of it. Tazuna chuckled deeply. Snow Country and Wind Country with their ninja village were the first to back out of the alliance. Both blondes widened at the information. Are you joking? Yugito found it hard to believe. The mayor just shook his head in a negative. No, I'm not. The political arena is a mess because of this whole ordeal. Like I said before, you've got half the elemental nations out looking for you, kid. Putting his head in his hands, Naruto sighed audibly and grumbled. Great. Just great. Yugito groaned loudly. Well, that complicates things a bit. After dinner, the group had sat down in the living room talking while Naruto had some of his shadow clones do the dishes and clean up, much to Tsunami's delight. The conversations ranged from news about the other countries to the family's day-to-day lives. As it turned out, Inari was attending the local school that was built since Wave Country had prospered so much. At the end of the evening, however, there was a small problem. What do you mean we have to share a room? Quote. Yugito damn near shouted and pointed at her partner. Why do I have to share a room with this knucklehead? Naruto grumbled and Tazuna answered, gesturing to the other room. That is the only other room we have and it's used as a storage room, so unless you want to sleep on some crates then you'll have to share the guest room. The Neko Senin huffed and strolled into the room. You have a strange taste in women, kid. The mayor shook his head. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. I thought we told you there's nothing going on between us. We're just traveling together. He made to follow her. Stupid old drunk. Whatever you say, kid. Try not to be too noisy, will you? I do want to sleep tonight, Tazuna said after him teasingly. The god of Flash didn't respond, but judging by the blush on his face, it was clear that he heard what the man said. He shook himself and entered. The room was fairly standard and, fortunately or unfortunately depending on who you were, had 2 beds. Yugito had unhooked her gear, mostly supplies, in her hooded cloak before dropping them on one of the beds closest to the bathroom door. Naruto didn't say a word as he hung up his trench coat on the nearby stand before dropping back on his bed, looking up at the ceiling. After a few moments, Yugito's voice penetrated the silence of the room. We've been using rivers and streams to bathe for the last 3 months. I'm going to take a shower. He didn't need to look to tell she was glaring at him. If you try to sneak a peek, I will castrate you. She disappeared into the bathroom soon after. When he heard the water in the show start to run, Naruto sat up and started looking around the room before his eyes landed on the spiral mark on the back of his right hand. He concentrated, and in a flash of yellow light his mother's sword appeared with its edge shining in the light. He didn't know how long he was staring at it for, but judging by the fact that he heard the water being turned off, it had to be more than half an hour. Yugito re-entered the room soon after with a towel wrapped around her, another hung over her shoulder and another holding up her hair to dry. When she saw him staring at his new blade, she sat down beside him, letting her semi-dried hair out of its towel. What are you doing? Quote. He looked up at her, trying to find the words. I don't know what I'm supposed to fight for anymore. Back in Konoha I fought because I had people to protect, but now, he turned his gaze back to the sword he held. What good is a weapon if you have nothing to use it for? Quote. Yugito couldn't say anything to that, knowing that she hadn't really experienced complete loneliness her whole life and then discarded. She thought what it might have been like if she had led a life like he did, and was saddened by the mere thought of it. She slipped away from him and unsealed her nightgown from a scroll. She put it on knowing he wasn't looking, and discarded the towels in the nearby basket before sitting back down beside him. You'll have to find out the answer yourself. No one can do it for you, she gently whispers and nods towards the bathroom. Go take a shower or something. You can worry about this stuff later. Yeah, you're right. Naruto stood and proceeded towards the bathroom. He stopped at the door and looked over his shoulder at her. Hey Yugito. The Kumo nin looked up at him and asked, what is Naruto? Thanks for coming with me on this trip. I'd be dead right now without you, he told her. He shook his head. Thanks for everything. He entered the bathroom a moment later, and after a few moments the sound of running water filled the room. Yugito just stared at the place he stood, feeling her cheeks heat up and knowing it wasn't because of the warm climate. What is wrong with me? She shook herself and brought her hands up to her cheeks to cool them. I'm acting like a schoolgirl, damn it. I don't like him. But he just drives me insane. What's happening to me? Wave Country. Tizuna's house. Later that night, after everyone had fallen asleep, the sounds of a low sobbing could be heard. Hearing the same thing as he did during their travels, Naruto awoke to the sight of a dimly lit room with the only source of light being the moonlight shining through the gap in the window's curtains. Sitting up straight, Naruto turned to where the sound was coming from, the other bed. It took a few seconds for his eyes to adjust to the darkness before he could see clearly that his room was curled up in the bed sheets, sweating heavily, appeared to be crying in her sleep. Mother, she whispered between her sobs. Climbing out of bed, Naruto approached and shook her. Hey Yugito, Yugito, wake up. She shook from the contact and her eyes snapped open. Are you alright? It looked like you were having a nightmare. She was breathing heavily, but she nodded. I'm fine, thank you. Naruto looked skeptical as her breathing seemed to even out. Do you want to talk about it? Yugito wiped her eyes to get rid of the tears and nodded. I've had nightmares every night for as long as I can remember. I'm plagued by them. I usually just sleep in the same bed as Karabi-sensei to settle my subconscious mind, but he's not here right now. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I could have woken you up if you were having trouble sleeping. Asked the ex-Konoha nin. Yugito shook her head and looked away. I didn't trust you back then. I've always had issues with trusting people. Does this have something to do with your mom? She stiffened at his question. I don't mean to pry, but you were muttering about her in your sleep, Naruto said hastily so as to appease any anger she might have accumulated at him. She sighed and explained, meeting his gaze with a sorrowful expression. My mother, she was killed by a secret group of Kumo Anbu that had gone rogue 10 years ago when I was 6, called the Blood Howlers. Naruto watched as her face contorted in rage, sadness and fright. They just came barging into our house and cut her in half right in front me. Naruto rushed over and grabbed her, holding her to him, allowing her to let her new wave of tears to fall onto his nightwear. She buried her face into his chest, crying throughout the night until she fell asleep. He didn't say a word as he tucked her back into bed and covered her up. He sighed and made his way back into his own bed, knowing that he'd need his sleep as well. He rolled over so he was facing away from his roommate and looking up at the curtains. After about 10 minutes, however, he felt a presence enter his bed and hug him from behind. Why Yugito? He asked, looking over his shoulder as she buried her face into the crunch of his neck. Thanks for waking me, Naruto. She had fallen asleep. Naruto didn't know what to do but felt his own fatigue catching up with him and soon fell into unconsciousness also. The sun shone in through the window, illuminating the room, and Naruto groaned in, still feeling tired. The sound of a pair of chirping morning birds filled his ear, awakening him from his relaxing slumber. He groaned again, covering his still closed eyes, and buried his face back into the pillow, trying to go back to sleep. However, he quickly opened his eyes when he felt something or someone shift along his chest. He looked down, having gotten used to the light, and saw a still asleep Yugito with her head rest on his chest. He sighed and said softly, nudging her, Hey, wake up, come on now. Her eyes fluttered open and she groaned, trying to get used to the sunlight. She looked up and said, Good morning. Morning, he said back with a smile. She lowered her head. I'm sorry about last night, it's just remembering what happened to my. Don't worry about it, he told her with a smile. If it helps, I know how you feel. Just then she remembered he had met his mother, or at least her clone, only to lose her the same day. It's not fair. She whispered. Life isn't fair. I know that better than anyone, he told her. She looked up at him and said, Naruto sadly she was interrupted by a knock at the door. Knock knock. Just then the door opened allowing Tazuna to enter. Hey you two. I need to talk to you both for a minute. The mayor stood there looking at them for a few moments before turning and saying quickly. Clearly I caught you at a bad time. Sorry for disturbing you. He closed the door on his way out. The two blondes looked at each other then took notice that they were both still the same bed dressed in their bed wear. You misunderstand. Naruto called after the man as Yugito said something along the lines of, pervert, while blushing madly. Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto stood in a clearing away from prying eyes. There was a poof of smoke as Naruto completed his jutsu signifying the appearance of a summoned creature. What appeared from the smoke was a medium-sized summoned toad sitting atop a large vertical scroll. Who summons me? The toad asked looking around before he spotted Naruto standing before him. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde answered stating his full name as he looked up at the toad atop the scroll. He stared up and continued, I was told you could help me, I'm trying to contact the key toad. Are you the key toad? The toad remained silent for a few moments as he seemed to analyze the blonde teenager and took note of style of coat he wore. The toad nodded before speaking quietly, I am the holder of the key, my name is Garotora. I must say it has been a long time since we have last seen each other Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. That term no longer applies to me Garotora-san. Kyuubi's consciousness is no longer inside the seal, Naruto corrected. Garotora chuckled. True enough but the seal is still there as is the Kyuubi's chakra core and power. Naruto just nodded hesitantly so he continued, may I ask what you want with the key and I Naruto-san? Quote, just call me Naruto and as for the key, I was told that you were given it and I would like you to give it to me so I can complete the seal on my stomach, Naruto answered truthfully. The key toad answered plainly and continued before he could protest. The last time someone used the key to tamper with your seal 4 tails of power were released and you lost all control. But, Naruto stuttered. No buts. You're too young to be trying to tamper with such a thing as the seal, Garotora reiterated, this isn't a game Naruto. If something were to go wrong there's no telling what would happen and if the seal is opened any further then chances are that the Kyuubi's power would be released in massive amounts probably resulting in a very large explosion. The Kitsune Sennin remained silent for a moment before he looked straight up into the toad's eyes and spoke, then test me. What did you say? Asked the key toad narrowing his eyes at the blonde. Test me, he said again. Jiraiya entrusted everything to you, if I were to test you then you will either pass or die, are you sure you want this? Garotora asked in complete seriousness, you will have to answer to the laws of the toads if we were to test you like this. I don't need to repeat myself, do I? Naruto phrased it like a question but they could both tell it wasn't. Very well. We'll begin the trial of the summoner now. Though be warned, you can only do this once. Garotora made a hand seal and suddenly the world around them went down. Anomaly. Unknown location. Sleeping lightly with his feet up on his desk sat one Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto snoring loudly. There was a knock at the door waking the man from his slumber and he groggily opened his eyes. They immediately snapped open seeing the room he was in. He looked around seeing he was in Konoha and more specifically the Hokage's office. The door opened slightly and a voice called out, can I come in Hokage-sama? Quote, Naruto looked around for a second unsure of what to say before he spoke up a tad nervous, yeah come on in. The door opened fully and allowed a man the blonde identified immediately as Uchiha Sasuke. Sorry to disturb you Rokudaime-sama but the council has scheduled another general meeting later today in case Sakura didn't mention it. I think someone who can't save their best friend isn't fit to become Hokage. What do you think, Sasuke? Every instinct in Naruto told him what was happening around him was wrong but he played anyways seeing as he had no idea what was happening. Yeah. I think she forgot. Are you feeling alright Dobi? You seem a little pale today. I would have thought you'd have gotten used to being Hokage by now. Sasuke smirked before continuing, or is it you're still thinking about you honeymoon last month with Sakura? Quote, honeymoon. What the hell is going on here? The blonde looked up at him and shook his head. No, it's not that. Right. The Uchiha smirked again and turned to leave. He was just about to move before he cast a look over at the seated blonde. I never did thank you for saving me from Orochimaru. You did. Yeah, well, it's over now, he told the dark-haired young man. Before he left, however, Naruto spoke up once more. You know, I can't seem to remember how I saved you and I don't know why. Are you losing your memory or something, Dobi? Surely you remember how. Sasuke seemed to have gone mute for a second even though his lips were moving. I must thank you for what you did for. Suddenly he was gone, almost as if he disappeared instantly. Pain suddenly flared throughout Naruto's body and his head fell to the desk as he gasped. The ground seemed to rumble and the desk suddenly disappeared, letting him fall forward onto the floor. He squeezed his eyes shut as the entire office seemed to collapse around him, and for some reason he could feel incredibly hot, like he was caught in a fire. Your eyes reek of a chakra far fouler than my own, it reminds me of Uchiha Madara. His eyes snapped open as the pain finally stopped. He got up off of the ground and saw that he was outside on what appeared to be a battlefield littered with dead bodies. He gave the bodies a quick look before nearly vomiting. They were all burnt beyond recognition while others looked like they had been ripped and cut apart. What the hell is going on around here? He asked, but no one was nearby. Just then he heard a monstrous roar and he looked towards its source on the horizon. His eyes widened as he saw what looked like the Kyuubi roar at a man dressed in samurai armor carrying a scroll standing atop a pillar of wood. Atop the fox's head stood another in samurai armor, but this one had red eyes that the blonde easily identified as the Sharingan. His face looked to be an older version of Sasuke with his hair much longer, and Naruto couldn't help but shiver at the look of pure insanity in his eyes. Hashirama. The Sharingan wielder screamed in rage as the fox roared again. Madara. The man on the pillar shouted back and made a hand seal, causing pillars of wood to rise from the ground around them. Kubiko. The giant fox started charging what appeared to be a mass of chakra at its mouth and condensing it into a solid sphere. Amari. The fox roared again, and suddenly in a blinding flash of light the ball exploded towards Hashirama. Promise of a lifetime. Naruto shielded his eyes from the light until it died down, but now instead of seeing the Kyuubi, Madara and Hashirama like he expected, he now saw a large valley with two statues standing at the waterfall upstream. Looking down he saw two figures standing at the statues' feet, and he knew exactly even at the range he was at. They were Naruto and Sasuke back when they were 13 and fighting in this same valley. The two had their gifts activated and were charging their most powerful attacks, readying for the final clash. Then it came. They both jumped high and stretched their arms out in the hope of beating the other. Chidori. Rasengan. Those were the sounds he heard as he saw the two attacks connect with each other before expanding in a ball of darkness, which then exploded in a shining white light. I don't want to see this, Naruto whispered with his fist shaking at the scene. He looked up and shouted out, stop this. Do you have someone precious to you? Naruto whirled around at the voice but noticed that no one was there. He turned back and saw that the valley was gone, and now he was in a large black void with no life sight. What is it you believe in? Naruto snapped his head in the direction of the voice and again saw nothing. That voice. What is it you're fighting so desperately for? This time the voice came from behind him and he suddenly felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his head to the right and looked over at the one with their hand on his shoulder. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized who it was and was unable to say anything to him. When a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they can become truly strong, Haku said with a smile. Haku, why are you? Naruto began. You should wake up. You'll catch a cold if you sleep on the ground, Haku said, still smiling. Before Naruto could speak, the entire world around him was encased in a blinding light. Wave Country. Training Field. Naruto let out a groan as groggily opened his eyes. Just then he remembered all of the stuff he had seen and immediately bolted up into a sitting position. The first thing he noticed was that night had already descended on the land and the moon was out in full. Oh good, you're awake. I thought you were going to die for a second there. He snapped his head to the left and saw Garotora sitting on top of his scroll a few feet away. You mean that was all a genjutsu? Naruto asked, shaking himself to clear the images from his mind. Not exactly. It's more of a form of soul searching. It basically portrayed all of the emotions you have ever felt directly into your consciousness, the key toad answered. What would have happened if I hadn't woken up? The blonde asked, shooting the toad a look. You'd be dead, kiddo, Garotora said simply. Naruto nodded and climbed to his feet. Right, so what now? The scroll suddenly flung open and wrapped around him. What the heck? He fell to the ground as Garotora jumped off. What is this? The key, was all the toad said as the kanji on the scroll merged with the seal on Naruto. There was a stream of light that appeared between the toad's abdomen and the scroll, but it died down quickly. It is done. There was a sudden rush of wind as massive amounts of red chakra erupted from Naruto's body. It soon engulfed him and he was only able to let out a small scream before the chakra took on the shape of a fox with 4 tails. His skin was ripped apart and blood mixed with the chakra, condensing it further. Once it was over, Garotora looked on worriedly. Naruto, are you alright? Never been better, came the answer from the 4-tailed fox as he flexed his hands, no claws. A moment later he let shut it down and returned to normal, breathing a sigh of relief. Well, that was interesting. Yeah, it also looks like your healing factor has been enhanced as well, the key toad commented, seeing that the blonde still had most of his skin and the rest was healing before his EYs. Thank you for everything. Naruto for the first time in his life bowed his head in respect. The toad just waved his hand dismissively. You don't need to thank me, kiddo. Jiraiya Dono would have wanted you to have the key. Naruto looked confused, catching the toad's choice of words, and asked, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Would have wanted? Did something happen? Garotora looked at him sadly for a few moments before explaining, you haven't heard, have you? Jiraiya Dono fell in battle against the Akatsuki leader 2 days ago. At those words, for the first time in 5 months, Naruto had felt true pain once again. Rain Country. AIM Akatsuki headquarters. I trust all of you are aware of the Gamma Sennin. Jiraiya recently infiltrating Omegakure. Pain, the leader of Akatsuki said, looking around the room at the numerous holograms of the other members. When they all nodded knowingly, Pain continued. Both myself and Conan intercepted and defeated him, though. The battle did last longer than I would have liked. Kisame let out a laugh he had been stifling for the last few minutes before finally speaking. That guy must have been something to hold off against 2 of Akatsuki's strongest alone. Pain remained silent before he spoke again. Jiraiya was once my sensei, and if he had prior knowledge of Conan and I, we would have surely lost. Itachi nodded at that, knowing the strength Pain wielded. Almost like a god. Moving on to more pressing issues, Itachi, Zetsu spoke up, getting the Sharingan wielder's attention. Your brother has killed Orochimaru and is hunting for you as we speak with his new team he's made. Itachi remained silent at the news, but Kisame just grinned and seemed to shoulder his sword. The shark man spoke in a challenging voice, let the brat come, I'll be sure to cut off one of his limbs. The Uchiha to his side, however, shook his head and stated, Sasuke is insignificant. I will deal with him personally. Deidara looked over at the Akatsuki leader and asked, with all due respect, Leader Sama. What do we do about the Kyuubi, Nibi and the Hachibi? Yeah, the Hachibi can wait. It has a village to defend it and will not be easy to capture. That leaves the Kyuubi and the Nibi. Pain narrowed his eyes with thought before looking up at them once again. Deidara, Hidan, Zetsu, Tobi. You are to hunt the Kyuubi and the Nibi together so they cannot get away this time. The group nodded, though in both Deidara and Hidan's cases reluctantly, with Tobi beaming brightly in the background and Zetsu looking bored off to the side. Yes, Leader Sama, the 3 spoke together, but in Toba's case. Tobi is a good boy. Note. Seriously, that guy has issues. Despite the heartache and pain from losing the closest person she had ever had, Senju Tsunade sat at her desk constantly fighting down the large number of tears threatening to form in her eyes. To the side next to the window sat the Toad elders, Fukasaku and Shima, though Fukasaku appeared to have no readable emotion on his face. In front of her stood the Konoha 11, minus Naruto, Asuma, Kakashi and Yamato, who appeared to be very saddened at the news they had heard. For some it was for no other reason than the fact that they heard possibly one of the strongest people they had ever encountered had been defeated and killed by one of his own student. For others it was the fact that the man had been with them for a short while, and though the girls hated his pervert nature, respected him for the strength he had wielded. But for most it was the fact that they all knew Naruto wouldn't take this news lying down. Thankfully some good news has come to us as well, Tsunade said, getting their attention. It appears from Jiraiya's last Toad mail that Orochimaru was killed by Sasuke and he is now going after his brother Itachi, she explained. So he's not returning, Sakura said as a statement more than a question. The Hokage shook her head before continuing, no, he's not. From the window Fukasaku spoke up, catching their attention. I'm afraid the Toads cannot be allied with Konoha any longer, since the only one my son Gamabunta will accept as a summoner is that blonde boy, and since he is exiled from here us Toads no longer have any attachments to this place. Everyone in the room looked shocked at the elder Toad, though he merely nodded towards Tsunade. Once we leave here it will be for the last time, Hokage Dono. The blonde woman clenched her fists, knowing that the last of Jiraiya she had would be gone after the Toad elders left, just like she had lost everything of Naruto. Before she could utter a response there was a sudden poof of smoke and a medium-sized red-black Toad appeared in the office. Pa! The Toad exclaimed upon seeing Fukasaku. Settle down, Kichi-chan, Shima calmed the young Toad. But Ma, I just got back from talking with the key Toad. This surprised both Ma and Pa, though everyone else in the room heard. Apparently Naruto now has the key and has used it, he explained further. Is there any danger from the containment seal? Fukasaku asked, alarmed. The key appears to have restored the seal to its original design, but that's not why I'm here, Gamakichi spoke quickly. I came to tell you that Naruto knows about Ero Sennin being killed. Apparently Garotora-sama told him and Naruto destroyed everything in sight because of it. Fukasaku asked in a serious voice, where is he now? Quote, hunting the Akatsuki leader. I think he's heading for Rain Country, though he should be passing the edge of Fire Country to get there, the Toad Prince answered truthfully. Sasuke will have to take that route too if he wants to locate his brother, Shino commented in monotone. Shisho? Sakura asked. Tsunade nodded. I know, all of you are to head out after Naruto and Sasuke. Though be careful if and when you confront them, I doubt they will come quietly. Understatement, Kakashi muttered, remembering his last skirmish with his former blonde student. Fire Country. Forest. Naruto and Yugito rode on Sakino's back at high velocity through the large forest en route to Rain Country, and though Yugito hadn't said anything, she was deeply worried about her traveling companion. He had returned to the house back in Wave Country with his cloths drenched in his own blood and his skin healing faster than it did before. None of the others saw him when he came in, but she did. He was angry. No, that's not true. He was downright pissed off. When he came in, he told her to pack her things and that they were leaving after he took a shower. When asked why, he just said that his former teacher had been killed and he was going after the one responsible. They had said their goodbyes to the family before he summoned Sakino, and they took off towards Rain, only stopping to rest, eat and drink. That had been a week ago and they were just now passing the edge of Fire Country. During that time Naruto had barely spoke throughout the entire trip, and she was becoming increasingly worried about him with each passing moment. Hey Naruto, maybe we should stop to rest, Yugito spoke up, getting his attention. We won't be in any shape to fight if we keep moving like this. He looked at her over his shoulder and noticed that she looked fatigued from the continuous travel. He sighed before nodding in agreement. All right. Sakino, sniff out the nearest town and take us there. The fox nodded lightly and changed its course slightly. After another 10 minutes they emerged from the forest onto a small grass field with what appeared to be a town on the other side of it. Sakino dashed across the field before coming to a stop just outside town. The fox gave one look at the two as they dismounted. It's probably not a good idea to have you carry us into the village from here, Sakino-chan, so we'll head on foot the rest of the way, Naruto told her. Sakino nodded with a smile. Summon me when you need me, Naruto-kun, Yugito-chan. Bye. Yugito waved as the fox poofed away. When she turned to her blonde companion she noticed he was already heading into the town street. Hey Naruto. Wait up. She called after him but he just kept walking as if he hadn't heard her. Naruto. She clenched her fists before taking off after him. Can I help you? The receptionist at the local inn asked in greeting. Yes, we'd like a room please, just for the one night, Naruto answered and the woman nodded with a smile. That will be. Note. I have no idea how Japanese currency works. Naruto handed her the money and she took it before handing him the keys to the room. Have a nice day. As the two senin made their way towards their room, Yugito asked him, where did you get that kind of money? You're not a part of any village now, even if you are still a ninja, so you aren't getting paid. It's something I have left over from my training trip with Arrow Senin, Naruto answered. Arrow Senin? Yugito asked, confused by the title. The Gamma Senin Jiraiya, Naruto answered, and she noticed his features tense before relaxing. He was the teacher you used to have that was killed? The Neko Senin asked as the two came to a stop in the hall. Yeah, Naruto answered with barely controlled rage showing in his eyes. He was like a grandfather to me. A perverted one but still someone I held dear, said the Kitsune Senin. Yugito noticed this of course and said, Naruto, you shouldn't try to bottle up your emotions like this. I know that, but I can't just sit around and let that bastard from Akatsuki get away with this. Naruto tried not to yell. Knowing they were in a hotel, but that didn't mean he didn't get his point across. I'll kill him and anyone else stupid enough to get in my way. He calmed himself and shook his head before turning to continue. Naruto, please don't let your anger counter. Yugito started only to stop when she was handed the keys. Go on ahead. I need to go blow off some steam. I'll be back later. The next moment Naruto was gone in several flashes of yellow light indicating the number of flash steps he used. The Kumo Nin looked down at the hallway towards where the last flash originated. Naruto. The god of flash walked through the crowded streets of the town trying to locate the source of his unease. Ever since he had left Wave Country he had been feeling a presence, for lack of a better term. Like there was something following them, or at least moving with them in the same direction, and it was beginning to frustrate him. Suddenly he felt a spike of chakra from far away and almost instantly snapped his head in its direction. They must have been waiting for us, Naruto thought and set off walking towards the source of the chakra spike. Naruto silently walked through the crowd until he emerged from the town and continued onto the open field outside. Once he got to a hill near the center of the field, he looked over his shoulder and held out his hand to the side. His coat flapped in the wind as he whispered the words, "Come out." An object he recognized as a red three-bladed scythe erupted from the ground trying to catch him. It cut deep, but that made no difference as Naruto disappeared in a poof of smoke, indicating it was a clone. Damn, I forgot clones are your speciality, brat, Hidan said from a few feet away as he pulled on the chain attached to his scythe. He looked over his shoulder, noticing the blonde was a few feet away, and said in a crazed voice, "Pray to Jashin-sama that you can kill me first or you will die." Where is Pain? Naruto asked. Like I'll tell you, Hidan said with as his smile widened. A bird made out of clay appeared behind the blonde and flew towards him at high speed. Raikyu, there was a whisper before a ball of lightning fell from the sky and hit the clay bird. It fell lifeless to the ground a moment later as Yugito touched down behind Naruto, so they were back to back. Sore. Why, I'm late. Don't worry about it, the Kitsune Senin told her as he saw the person who defeated Gaara was riding atop a large dragon made of clay. Deidara was his name if he remembered it correctly, Oh great, it's the gender-confused weirdo who kidnapped Gaara that one time. I am not a gender-confused weirdo. Yeah. The bomber shouted in rage at the insult, though Hidan appeared to be barely holding in his laughter. Hello. Do you see Toby? The two senin looked over to see a man wearing an Akatsuki cloak and an orange mask. He waved almost childishly, getting their attention. Toba's over here. Quote, comma, quote. Quote, comma, quote. Seriously, what is that guy smoking? Yeah. Deidara asked, but Hidan just shrugged at the question. How the hell should I know? He's your partner, said the human reaper. Sage mode activated. The ground shook as both Naruto and Yugito shifted into their respective forms, releasing a small shockwave around them with a loud roar. Their now slitted eyes were shifting between the three Akatsuki members, and as he saw this, Deidara couldn't help himself. This will be a blast. Yeah, the bomber shook with anticipation. Yugito cast her partner a look and saw that his eyes were seemingly glued to the dragon rider above them. Flashback no jutsu begin. I'll kill him and anyone else stupid enough to get in my way. He calmed himself and shook his head before turning to continue down the corridor. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto, the Neko senin trailed on in thought. A sudden explosion shook the area and the two senin separated from each other's sides. Naruto skidded to a halt a few feet away, only to jump out of the way of another exploding clay bomb that had took the form of a bug. Once in midair, Naruto watched as Deidara's clay dragon seemed to spat out a volley of small chunks of clay that looked to be homing in on the Kitsune senin. Damn it! I can't shunpo in midair, Naruto growled in thought as he brought his arms up over his chest as a shield. Futon. Razin, he whispered, and a plate of a spinning chakra formed in front of him. The projectiles exploded harmlessly on the chakra shield, and Naruto touches back down on the ground again, glaring up at the bomber. Where's Pain? It was a demand, not a question. Deidara just scoffed. Sorry. Not telling. It's a secret. Yeah. Can Toby play too? Naruto looked over his shoulder and saw the orange-masked Akatsuki member staring at him questionably with his said head to the side. Though he didn't know what had caused it at the time, at that moment Namikaze Uzumaki, Naruto could not help himself but be consumed by his anger. He attacked. Yugito sat atop a large one-tailed cat with comparable size to Sakino, and together they dashed across the open field. Now Ray. Fire. Yugito shouted as she saw the man chasing her move closer. I hear you, the cat. Ray muttered in annoyance before suddenly skidding to a stop while turning. Nekomata Enden, she called out and launched a giant bolt of purple flames at the Akatsuki member. There was a sudden explosion as it connected, but that didn't mean they had won. You can't run this time, girly. Hidan appeared in front of the two in a single moment. By the will of Jashin-sama, I will kill you. Quote. Before he could land the hit, Ray used her tail to throw her passenger off before disappearing back to the summoned realm in a poof of smoke. Hidan growled and turned, but was knocked off balance by an impact from the side. He looked down, and instead of a kunai like he had expected, he saw an arrow. He looked up at the Neko senin and just saw her standing there with a bow in her hands aimed at him. She lowered her weapon and smirked. Hi no ya, she said barely above a whisper, and the arrow suddenly exploded in his side. Got you, Yugito whispered again, seeing his now unmoving body on the ground still relatively intact. She thought she had finished him with that last hit and slowly took a step towards him. When she got close enough, however, she wasn't able to dodge the moving scythe coming at her from the side. It slashed her face from the side, and by the will of its attached chain the scythe returned to its wielder's hand. Did you really think something like that would kill me? Hidan asked, standing up, showing the large hole in his side. I had hoped, she admitted. Hidan just grinned and began to create a symbol on the ground around him using his own blood. I hope you enjoyed life because you are about to be JUDG. Ed by Jashin-sama. Just then the skin on his body changed color into something reminiscent of a Grim Reaper. Fire Country. Plain. Rasengan. Naruto called out as he lunged at the masked Akatsuki member. What the hell? He asked, startled as he appeared to phase right through him. The blonde skidded to a stop a few feet away and looked at the man's orange mask. What's going on here? I know I landed that hit, but it did no damage. Come play with Toby. The Akatsuki member gestured for the blonde to come at him. Naruto's eyes begun to shift in color from blue to red as he glared at Toby. He made a hand seal and muttered, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 20 clones appeared at his side and charged towards the Akatsuki member at full speed. I have to thank the Raikage for this jutsu next time I see him. Yay, more friends, Toby waved. Bunshin Debakua. The clones called out once in range and exploded with tremendous forces. Toby emerged from the smoke completely unharmed and looked around, unable to find the Kitsune Sennin. Where'd you go, mister? Here, came a voice from behind him. He turned swiftly and was completely unprepared for the long double-edged sword that struck at his chest. I'll ask again, where's Pain? This sword, Toby said, losing his childish demeanor. As a transcended sword and so cannot be blocked by thing you're using to deflect my attacks, Naruto told him as he twisted the blade. Now answer the question, or believe me you won't like what I'll do. Toby didn't reply as he suddenly started to shrink into his Akatsuki cloak until it disappeared too. What the hell? Where did he go? Naruto asked, looking around for the masked Akatsuki member. You still have me to contend with, yeah. Deidara shouted from his clay dragon as he launched another volley. Would you stop dropping bombs on me already? Naruto shouted in frustration and anger as he dodged the barrage. Die. Yeah, was Deidara said as he launched another salvo of clay bombs. I've had enough of this. I think it's about time I tried out that new jutsu I salvaged from Whirlpool country. Naruto muttered darkly with his eyes now fully red. He made a hand seal and 3 shadow clones appeared at his side, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He held out both of his hands and 2 of the clones went to one of them while the last went to the other. The 2 clones standing at one side begun to insert chakra and wind manipulation into a contained sphere in the palm of his hand while the last clone drew on the water in the neighboring or 2. Spin it in the palm of his other hand. Futon. Rasengan, Sweden. Hahenryu, Gufu Suika no Jutsu. The original Naruto called out as he brought both of the jutsus together into a new one. A large spinning wall of water exploded from the contact, putting a swirling barrier of water and wind between E2 fighters. What is this? Deidara shouted in rage as he saw his bombs detonate harmlessly on the water vortex. Futon. Rasen Shuriken. Deidara turned swiftly, seeing the giant chakra wind shuriken flying at him at high speed. Shit, yeah, the bomber said through gritted teeth as he jumped off of his clay dragon. The chakra shuriken sailed past the dragon and continued on towards him. It narrowly missed as Deidara fell towards the ground, but just then the Rasen Shuriken detonated, catching his arm. His arm was ripped apart, completely destroying it and making him wince in pain from the attack. Once he touched down on the ground again, he glared over at his opponent. You'll pay for that, yeah. The bombers shouted as he returned to his feet. Despite his words, Deidara knew he couldn't win a prolonged fight against him and so decided to not hold back. I was hoping to get the chance to use this against Itachi, but you'll do for a good test subject, yeah. He pulled out a large mass of clay and ate it with his normal mouth. You had better pray, demon, because you die here and now, yeah. He vomited out a large mass of clay which expanded and Naruto jumped away before taking a look up at the towering giant. Oh crap. It was a Nendo Bunshin, clay clone, of Deidara. Nothing really new about that since Naruto had seen him make them before, but now, this wasn't a regular clone. The thing was massive. Easily 50 feet tall if not taller, and if Naruto remember correctly, this particular type of clone had a tendency to explode. If that thing explodes right now, it might kill me. I'm not sure if the Rasengan can take that kind of a blast. Naruto's breathing suddenly seemed to become ragged. He turned sharply and stepped as far away as he could. I've got to get away, Shunpo no Jutsu. You can't escape my art, yeah. Deidara shouted from the air. Let me introduce you to C4 Karura. Ketsu. The large clone suddenly seemed to disintegrate until nothing was gone. Naruto stopped on a nearby tree and looked back. What the hell happened? I thought it was supposed to explode. He could suddenly feel a large amount of impacts against his barrier as the protective barrier began to flare into sight. What's hitting the Rasengan? Are those bombs? Single quote. Die. Yeah, the bomber shouted, riding atop his clay dragon once again. Damn it, they must be some form of very small clay bombs. I can't stop them all from getting through the Rasengan though. The Rasengan seemed to become visible under the constant barrage. My healing factor is dealing with T. He bombs that get through the Rasengan, but it's not working fast enough. It was true. His skin was being blown apart as well as his internal organs, and because of his advanced healing he was able to keep going. Sadly, the damage was beginning to exceed the healing rate and his skin was being blown apart faster than it could heal. If the Rasengan fell, then he would be dead in moments, and he knew it. Come on, I need a way out of this. Think, damn it. Think, the Kitsune Sennin yelled in thought, still feeling his defense being continuously hit. His eyes suddenly flashed in recognition. Of course, if I add the wind element, then the Rasengan will be able to shred the bombs at the cellular level just like the futon Rasenshuriken does. Single quote. He concentrated and suddenly there was a continuous low-pitched screech as he called out, Futon Rasengan. From that moment on, none of the miniature bombs were able to get past his barrier. Deidara was getting frustrated when he saw that Naruto was no longer taking damage. However, Deidara noticed that the ex-Konoha nin was breathing harder than before while he tried to keep his barrier up as long as possible, even going as far as to tap into his Sage Mode's chakra supply to maintain it at full power. After another minute and 23 agonizing seconds of this, the last of the bombs were destroyed and Naruto dropped to the ground, panting hard with sweat rolling down his face. Deidara saw that his eyes had returned to normal and knew that the Kitsune Sennin's Sage Mode was now out of power. I was expecting you to die. Yeah, the bomber said, more as a statement than anything else. Sorry to disappoint you, Naruto shot back, still trying to catch his breath. Your barrier is down though, and it looks like that power of yours is out of juice as well. Yeah, Deidara grinned, amused. He's right. Sage Mode has shut down and I don't know how to get it back right now. The futon Rasengan drained almost all of my chakra. How the hell do I win this? Naruto suddenly heard a shout and looked up, see a swarm of clay birds descending towards him. Oh crap. He quickly made some quick hand seals and inhaled a large breath of air. Futon Datapa. He blew out the air in a blast of wind, using up all of his remaining chakra in the process, though it proved to be enough as it deflected or destroyed the oncoming swarm. That's it. I'm spent. You have to be running out of chakra by now, yeah. It was an innocent question, but the way the bomber said it was almost crazed. Naruto gulped and thought, what do I do now? Flashback no jutsu begin. The toad nodded before speaking quietly. I am the holder of the key. My name is Garotora. I must say it has been a long time since we have last seen each other. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. That term no longer applies to me, Garotora-san. Kyuubi's consciousness is no longer inside the seal, Naruto corrected. Garotora chuckled. True enough, but the seal is still there, as is the Kyuubi's chakra core and power. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto's eyes flashed in remembrance. Oh yeah, I forgot I still have the furball's chakra core stuff fed in my gut. He grinned before he began to concentrate on accessing that particular energy source. I have to remain in control or this won't work. What are you smiling at? Yeah. Nothing you do will change the outcome of this fight. Yeah. Deidara eyes bore down on the ex-Konoha nin, but Naruto just glared back. For the record, I would have kicked you the first time if Kakashi hadn't stopped me. Naruto finished, and suddenly red chakra exploded from his body. Note: I'm sure some of you know I got this line from Halo Wars. It soon wrapped around his body and Deidara was forced to guide his clay dragon further away the spiraling column of red light. The chakra encased Naruto in a barrier of red, taking the shape of a fox with one tail, and then a second tail formed. Then another and another until a total of 4 tails had formed. Naruto let out a silent scream as his skin was ripped apart from the intense power running through and across him. The blood mixed with the chakra and suddenly Naruto's body was no longer seen. A large shockwave erupted from his position and flattened everything within a 5-mile radius. In the center there was only a crimson chakra fox with his face covered in a black mask with pure white eye and a seemingly glowing mouth. Well, this just got a lot harder, yeah. The fox roared. Fire country. Forest. The Konoha retrieval team jumped from tree to tree in search of their missing comrades with Hinata and Kiba leading them with their respective abilities. Suddenly Yamato stopped on one of the branches and snapped his head towards the distant tree to his left. He turned his gaze to his hand feeling a small but noticeable sting and saw that smoke drifted off of it. What's wrong? Kiba asked the Anbu captain. It's Naruto. He just released 4 tails of Kyuubi's chakra, Yamato informed them in a desperate voice. I thought you put another seal on him to stop that from happening, Kakashi stated. I did, but for some reason it's not working, Yamato answered hurriedly. Can you track him? The copy nin asked and Yamato nodded in reply. Alright then, let's move, he said as an order. Follow me, said Yamato as he took off in the direction he had been looking towards. Fire Rain Country. Border. Now I can finally savor the pain your death will cause, Hidan laughed as he drew his weapon back readying to stab himself. Say hello to Jashin-sama for me, girly. He shouted before stabbing himself through the chest. Yugito's eyes widened as she remained standing motionless for a few seconds before dropping to her knees and then falling down until she lay on the cold ground. Hidan sighed in satisfaction as he pulled the scythe from his chest. Ah. Now that hit the spot. He walked confidently over to the fallen woman's body, as he hefted up his weapon onto his shoulder. Was it good for you? Not really, she said as she bolted to her feet and dashed towards him. He stood shocked that she was still alive for a moment before getting his bearings again, but it was already too late. Keizuki. She knocked the Akatsuki member's chain-wielded weapon out of the way with one flame-covered arm and flung out her other arm towards the man's chest. Suin Keizuki. She called out as she pierced the man and cleaved off the arm that held onto the chain. She pulled away before he could counter-attack and kicked him in the chest, knocking him back. I got you. How are you still alive? I know I cut you. I had your blood, so how did you escape my curse? Hidan shouted his fury at her clutching his missing arm. Yugito grinned and answered, I'm a girl of many talents. One of which is while in my cat sage mode I become the direct servant of Shinigami-sama, and as such he will not allow you to curse me while I'm in this form. Hidan let out a low growl of anger under his breath as he glared at her. You really think you've won? He suddenly started laughing madly, almost crazily at her. Fool. This is getting interesting. He rolled to the left and picked up the chain connected to his scythe. I'm going to kill you, girly. Ha 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 ha. Quote, if Yugito were to be truly honest with herself, she would say that she was scared, no, terrified of the man she was facing. He had taken everything she had thrown at him and just kept going. Hell, the guy didn't even look bothered by the amount of damage she had inflicted on his body. Yet this man, this demon, appeared to have just shrugged off the wounds like they were paper cuts and seemed to keep coming at her. Yes, she was truly scared of him, if only for that simple reason. Stay away from me, she shouted as purple chakra erupted from her body and spiraled around her. Her body was ripped apart under the constant heat and the chakra became purple flames. The flames suddenly took the shape of a large cat made out of fire and with 2 swishing tails behind her. She let out a loud roar at the Akatsuki member, which was reminiscent of a tiger's. She flung her large fire claw at her and a wave of flames erupted from the tips. Hi Nami, the fire cat growled out as the flames became brighter. Now this is more like it. Hidan shouted as he dodged the large waves of fire coming at him. Hold still, the cat growled and begun forming a ball of what appeared to be concentrated heat and flames at her open mouth. Nekomata Gukakyu. The ground shook as the fireball was shot towards Hidan and exploded in a glorious display of light. Once it died down, the landscape looked to have been leveled and there were a few patches of glass littering the smoking ground. Is that all you've got? I'm disappointed, Came a voice from behind her, prompting the cat to turn swiftly. How did you survive that? Yugito growled at seeing the Akatsuki member standing at the edge of the nearby cliff leaning on his scythe. I told you I'm immortal, he shot back with an insane grin. The fire cat charged towards him, intent on eating him alive. Hey! Hidan chuckled before he jumped high into the air above Yugito. The cat skidded to a stop as she neared the edge. She cast a look down while keeping an eye on her opponent and noticed that down the cliff was a large ravine. Hidan touched down on the opposite side of her and swung his scythe down on the ground, causing it to crack. Sayonara, he said with a wave as the entire cliff edge collapsed and fell into the ravine with Yugito. She screamed as she touched to water as her flame body was instantly cooled and she emerged from the water in her humanoid form again. She glared up at the seemingly undying man even as he tells her, "Give up already, girlie, you can't win." She climbed out of the water so she stood on it and glared up at Hidan. Her cloak had been destroyed and her clothes were dripping wet from the dive. Yugito quickly went through her options and knew her clothes would weigh her down if she were to fight the Akatsuki Reaper in close combat again. Thankfully for her, she noticed something when she had climbed out of the water that would allow her to still fight. Her Sage mode had been recharged. Deciding to take this as a good omen, she held out her hand and ignited it in a burst of flames. Now what are you doing? Hidan asked, smirking down at her. I told you already that I'm immortal. You can't kill me with that petty old thing. Who says I'm aiming for you? The Neko Sennin asked as she unleashed the superheated stream of fire towards the already darkened sky. Kaden. Dai Keizuki, she called out as the beam seemed to dissipate in the sky. What was that meant to do? Give me a tan. Hidan mocked, but his grin quickly turned into a frown when the area became darker and he could hear the sound of lightning echoing from all directions. It's just meant to finish what the Nekomata Gukakyu was supposed to do before, Yugito answered with a smile. Your Jashin-sama won't save you here, Tem. Have a nice day in hell. Raiden. Kirin, she called out as the lightning in the area increased drastically. Suddenly a large dog-like monster made of lightning shot down from the sky and hit the cliff with a thunderous blast, sending massive amounts of heat and shockwaves for 100 feet. Hidan screamed as his body was melted beyond recognition until there was nothing left but a pile of dust smeared all over the now destroyed cliff edge. Yugito slumped to her knees as her eyes returned to normal, having running out of power in her Sage mode. Thank God. Oh, thank God, Yugito thought as she crawled across the water onto dry land. She fell onto her back and stared up at the sky, feeling completely exhausted. That's it, I'm done. I've got nothing left. Sage mode is deleted, I'm drenched, so demon mode is out of the question and my normal chakra reserve is running on empty. I need a vacation. Suddenly she felt a large chakra spike fill the air and turned her head to the left where she felt it originated from. That chakra, that's Kyuubi's power being released. She forced herself to her feet and started off towards where her partner was fight. If someone were to ask her why she was pushing herself like this, she would have just told them it was something she wanted to do. Deidara veered away, avoiding the massive shockwave that seemed to span out over the ground below. He swung his clay dragon around and looked towards the center of the massive crater his opponent had created. In the center stood a crimson chakra fox with 4 swishing tails, down on all fours with that same annoying grin on its face. It was mocking him with its grin. Had enough yet? Naruto growled out in an unearthly tone. You annoying little brat. You dare to mock my art? I'll kill you. Yeah. Deidara shouted angrily at him. Several small projectile-like clay birds shot out of the clay dragon and sped towards the fox with great speed. Naruto saw it coming, however, and so he lifted his right arm up and clenched his crimson fist before bringing it down on the ground with monstrous force. The resulting shockwave that was released sent ripples of earth in all directions, stretching for miles even as the blast destroyed the approaching attack from Deidara. Are you done? The fox taunted with that same grin on its face. Not quite. Yeah. The bomber's glare intensified, as did his anger at the fox below. He pulled out a small object made of clay from his pouch at his side and said, I underestimated you, so I won't hold back, yeah. Deidara steered his clay dragon directly above the fox and dropped the mass of clay down towards it. Let's see how you like C3, yeah. Naruto tried to dodge, but the Yuki that was constantly moving around him made it hard to move more than a few feet before the clay bomb detonated. The ground shook, causing those of the Konoha retrieval team to stop as they suddenly heard the grumbling sound of an explosion. Okay, what the hell was that? Kiba asked as the earth stopped shaking. It came from up ahead, Kakashi told them. We must hurry. Yamato shouted and they took off again. As the team continued, Sakura's mind focused on the one person she knew she had to meet again, Naruto. How do you like my C3? It's a blast, yeah. Deidara said as a statement more than a question. The dust cleared after a few moments and Naruto could be seen still in his four-tailed form. Where's Pain? The question was so simple and yet filled with so much anger that it was slightly disturbing to the Akatsuki bomber. I'm not telling, yeah, Deidara said with a grin as he saw the fox level a glare at him. Then I'll make you talk, Naruto growled out. He suddenly let out a massive roar sending shockwaves across the crater. His body shook for a moment as dozens of blue and red balls were released from his body. Now what are you doing? The bomber asked quickly, losing his grin. Naruto didn't answer as he brought his tails up in front of his mouth and the balls suddenly started to merge together between the tips. Well, that looks unhealthy, yeah. Deidara veered away, determined to put some distance between the two as now completely black ball in the hovering just above the fox's head imploded in on itself until it was the size of a pebble. That much condensed chakra can kill me if I'm not careful. Yonbaiko Amari. We're getting close, Yamato reported as they drew near. The group stopped suddenly as they felt a massive amount of chakra being released, followed by a blind light shining through the tree in front of them. Shockwaves rippled past them which would have blown them away had they not been using chakra to remain where they were. Okay, enough of this shit. What the hell was that just now? Kiba asked in a shout after the light dissipated and the noise settled down. I believe that was the Kyuubi's jutsu, Yamato informed them. I remember feeling something similar when Naruto fought Orochimaru, the Anbu captain added. That was an Oni jutsu. How far away are we from them? Kakashi asked, remembering when he saw Naruto use 2 tails worth of power. 32 kilometers, Yamato answered as looking at the direction of the blast. It will take us 30 minutes to get there even at ninja speed. Kakashi shook his head and took off. Let's move. The rest of the team followed right after. Dust clouded the area from view. The rumbling of rocks, trees and other things falling down filled the air with a sickening smell. A long line of shifted dirt led from the center of the crater to the wide canyon at its edge which stretched for additional 20 miles outside of the crater. Naruto let a grin spread across his Yuki-covered face as he saw Deidara standing on one knee breathing with difficulty. The Akatsuki bomber's cloak was in ruins and his body was littered with numerous scrapes and scratches. He had used almost all of his remaining clay to hold back the blast, and even though it wasn't a direct hit, it still dealt a lot of damage. Deidara started shouting angrily at him, "How are you so much stronger than before? It must be your demon. Yes, it must be your demon. It's inhuman to progress at such a rate. I'll kill you, you damn demon." He didn't care about capturing the Jinchuriki anymore. All he wanted was to kill this boy once and for all, even if he had to die to do it. He tore off his ruined cloak along with his shirt, revealing his scarred body riddled with stitches. The bomber suddenly started laughing uncontrollably as he undid one of the stitches in his chest, and once the stitches were opened, Naruto could clearly see what had been wrapped up. It was a mouth. He had a mouth in the middle of his chest. He pulled out all of the clay he had left, which was only a handful, and stuffed it into his chest mouth, allowing it to chew and swallow it. Let me introduce you to my ultimate art, Deidara said with a crazed smile. Crack-like webs began to form on his skin branching out of his chest mouth. I will detonate myself here and now. You're insane, Naruto snarled as he watched the cracks continue to expand to every corner of the bomber's body. Never before has an explosion like this been seen, Kitsune Sennin. Deidara laughed as he saw the fox narrow its eyes. The art I will create will scar the earth and light the heavens. With this act one shall become art. The bomber's skin was beginning to dissolve now as the mouth in his chest seemed to condense into a ball of chakra resembling a face. When I become true art Kyuubi Jinchuriki you will die. His legs were gone now with only wire-like chakra threads remaining. The blast will destroy everything within a 10-mile radius and not even you can possibly survive it, yeah. His arms were gone now and the cracks had reached his head. I have to get away. Naruto tried to move but felt the Yuki still weighing him down. Are you afraid now? Deidara taunted seeing the fox try to flee. You can't escape me now. Cower in awe. Recoil in despair. Cry your heart out. The last of his body had dissolved and wire chakra threads retracted back to the floating ball of chakra which seemed to have a smiling face on it. There's not enough time. Naruto's pure white eyes widened in horror as the floating chakra head seemed to glow. Because my art is a blast. The retrieval team stopped again as a massive explosion sent rippling shockwaves across the land. Thankfully they were still quite a few miles off so none of them were hurt but the fact that they could see the explosion even this distance was very discomforting. Now what? Kiba growled. That chakra. It's the same as the Akatsuki member Naruto and I fought back when Kazekage-sama was kidnapped. Kakashi stated remembering the blonde bomber who appeared to have committed suicide rather than surrender. Once the blast appeared to have died down the team continued on, everyone be careful. We don't know what we're walking into. They nodded as they closed in on one of their objectives. Yugito had experienced a lot of emotions during her 16 years of life from angry to happy. One emotion however she hadn't felt since she was 6 years old and that emotion was fear. Fear for someone close to her getting hurt. When she saw the massive explosion she thought that the worst had happened and quickly after arriving on the scene found the entire crater covered in smoke and dust. Naruto. She called out using her hands and chakra to amplify her voice but received no answer. Naruto. She called again but again got no reply. Her eyes catch a flicker of light from within the dust cloud. She immediately jumps down towards it. Once she was close enough she was able to identify what it was. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto lay on his back unconscious. His trench coat wasn't anywhere to be seen and his clothes were covered in blood which she identified as his own. She kneeled beside his body and began to channel some chakra into her hands to heal the burnt skin covering his body. Once she was finished she then bit her thumb and went through a few hand seals before slamming her hand down on the ground, Kuchio's no jutsu. The one-tailed cat she had ridden before poofed into existence. Hello Ray-chan. I need your help with this if you don't mind. The cat princess looked at the two before nodding. Very well Yugito Dono. There's a town not too far from here. Let's go. Yugito slung Naruto over her shoulder and climbed on the cat. Ray nodded at the directions and took off at high speed away from the still smoking crater. The retrieval team dropped down from the trees and landed near the crater. Kiba sniffed the air and shook his head. I can't smell anyone with the amount of smoke in the air. I cannot see anyone within range of the crater, Neji informed the team as he shut off his Byakugan. Me neither, Hinata added saddened. What could have done this? Tenten asked as she looked over the wide crater with the canyon attached to it. Naruto, Yamato replied simply. Are we talking about the same happy-go-lucky blonde here? Last time I checked Naruto never did like mindless destruction. Tenten sent him a glare. Yamato shook his head and pointed at the canyon attached to the crater. No, we're talking about the student of the late Jiraiya-sama who is hunting the man who killed his sensei. They only needed one glance at the canyon to know that Naruto hadn't held anything back. Despite knowing this however they couldn't help but fail to match the image they knew of Naruto with the mass destruction around them. There are also traces of chakra from the Akatsuki member we encountered on the Kazekage retrieval mission in the crater. The blast pattern matches with Iwa clay bombs, Neji informed them. Is he dead? Kakashi asked in a tone that made it know that he was completely serious. Neji nodded. According to the chakra residue, he was near or in the center of the blast when it occurred. Well, at least he went out with a bang, Tenten joked, lightening the mood. What about Naruto? Kakashi asked, casting a look towards Yamato. The Anbu captain shook his head. He's powered down. I can't track him now. Neji also shook his head. The large amount of chakra in the area is masking everyone's chakra signatures, so I am unable to ascertain his location. Kakashi sighed and nodded. All right then, everyone split up a search. I doubt they've gone far, so let's find them. Fire Country. Konoha Town. Pain lanced through his body, waking him up startled for a moment. He sat up groggily and looked around, trying to get his bearings. He was in a room with a single double bed and an open window. You're awake? That's a relief. A voice came from the side and he snapped his head in its direction. I thought you weren't going to wake up for a moment there, Yugito said from the door. Naruto rested his head back against the bed frame and asked, how long was I out? 32.